his mother's lavish birthday party, laughter filled the air, until his wife, dressed in a simple gown, quietly approached with a gift no one expected. Her husband, basking in the glow of admiration, mocked her in front of everyone, sneering that she couldn't even afford the hospital bills where his mother had been admitted. Guests chuckled. Cameras flashed. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the hospital he bragged about paying for belonged to the very woman he was humiliating. How does a man ridicule his wife in a building her signature keeps running? How does a woman sit through mockery knowing she holds the power to rewrite his pride? And when the truth finally slips out, will his laughter survive what she does next? The chandelier above shimmered over crystal glasses, silver cutlery, and laughter sharpened by pride. The party was hosted at the Wellington Manor, one of the most expensive event centers in Dallas. Everyone there knew Eric Donovan, handsome, confident, a rising entrepreneur who'd just sold his tech startup for $120 million. But only a few remembered the woman standing beside him, Grace Donovan, his wife, once his muse, now a quiet shadow leaning on her silver cane. Grace had been in a car accident 2 years earlier, paralyzed waist down. Eric stayed for 6 months before he began disappearing into business trips. The whispers started, and eventually everyone knew he had a mistress. Yet Grace never confronted him. She simply moved slower, spoke softer, and smiled at all the right moments, like she was waiting for something only she could see. As Eric raised a toast to his mother, his hand rested on the waist of Vanessa Blake, his new business partner, a woman whose laughter carried arrogance disguised as charm. Vanessa whispered something into Eric's ear, and he laughed. Loudly, cruelly, then turned to Grace. "And sweetheart," he said, voice dripping with mock sympathy, "don't worry about the hospital bills next time. I'll handle them. You can keep focusing on physical therapy." A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Grace blinked slowly, her fingers tightening around her cane. Her calm unnerved him, because behind her silence she carried something heavier than pride: knowledge. The hospital Eric's mother had been treated in, Havenfield Medical Center, wasn't just any hospital. It was one of the few she had inherited quietly from her late father, Dr. Charles Hamilton, a respected surgeon and philanthropist. Her father's estate had been hidden under a trust that didn't bear her married name. When Eric had left her 2 years ago, saying he needed space to heal, Grace didn't fight. She watched him move in with Vanessa, watched them attend charity galas and make the gossip pages. But while the world thought she was fading, Grace was building. Her father's lawyer, Mr. Collins, had advised her to take over his medical trust quietly. "You don't need to shout, Grace," he told her once. "The best revenge is success whispered in the ears of those who once pitied you." Tonight, as Eric's laughter echoed through the hall, Grace smiled faintly. "Happy birthday, Mother," she said gently, placing a wrapped box on the table. Inside was a gold pendant engraved with the words, "Forever Grateful," from Havenfield staff. Eric's mother, Martha Donovan, blinked in confusion. "You know the staff there?" Grace's eyes softened. "I know them very well," Eric scoffed. "She's been going there for therapy for years, Mom. She probably knows the janitors." The laughter returned, but it was weaker this time. Grace met his eyes unflinching. "I know more than janitors, Eric," she said softly. "Sometimes it's the quiet ones who sign the checks." Something flickered in his face, a brief flash of unease he quickly buried beneath a smirk. Vanessa tugged his arm, whispering, "Ignore her, babe," but Grace wasn't done. She turned to Martha, her voice tender, genuine. "You were a wonderful patient, Mrs. Donovan. The nurses still talk about how kind you were." The room fell silent for a second too long. Eric's mother tilted her head, confusion deepening. "What do you mean?" Grace smiled, that same calm, mysterious smile that never needed volume to demand attention. "Nothing at all," she said. "Just tell the staff at Havenfield I said hello when you go for your next checkup." As she walked out of the hall, supported by her cane, the silence she left behind cut deeper than any insult could. Eric forced a laugh, waving it off. "She's dramatic," he muttered. "Ignore her." But Vanessa watched the door with narrowed eyes, sensing something he didn't. The air had shifted. Outside, Grace stepped into her black Bentley, her driver holding the door. "Home, ma'am?" he asked. She looked back at the glowing building in the distance and whispered, "No, John, to the office," inside her mind. The party was still echoing, but so was her father's voice. Revenge doesn't start when they hurt you. It starts when they think they've won. And tonight Eric thought he had, but he hadn't seen the documents already filed in court, the ones transferring Havenfield's medical ownership to a new board one Grace chaired. He hadn't seen the subpoena waiting to expose his fraudulent business expansions. He hadn't seen the secret recordings of Vanessa's embezzlement from his company. Grace had seen it all. She had built it all. And when the morning came, Eric would wake up thinking the party had ended, unaware it had just begun. Eric woke the next morning with the confidence of a man who believed the world still bowed to him. The sunlight poured into the penthouse bedroom he now shared with Vanessa, highlighting the white marble floors, the expensive champagne glasses left unfinished, and the pile of designer dresses from the night before. He stretched lazily, glanced at his phone, and smiled when he saw his mother's message. "Lovely party, dear, but something about Grace last night unsettled me." He smirked, tossing the phone aside. "She's jealous," he muttered, sliding out of bed. Vanessa stirred, her voice soft and sleepy. "Who's jealous?" "Grace," he said. "She's playing mind games." Vanessa sat up, brushing her blonde curls away. "You mean the crippled ex-wife who still signs her name like she's somebody?" "Babe, she's nothing." He chuckled, wrapping his arm around her. "Exactly." But somewhere across Dallas, Grace was already in motion. The elevator doors of Havenfield Medical Center opened, and she rolled in with quiet authority. Every nurse she passed straightened. "Good morning, Mrs. Donovan," one said nervously. She smiled. "Grace," she corrected softly. "Always Grace." In her office, her assistant Lydia was waiting with a stack of folders. "The audit reports from your husband's company, ma'am. The financial discrepancies you requested are all here. You were right. Vanessa's been moving funds through shell accounts in Miami." Grace nodded, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "Send copies to Mr. Collins and attach them to the court proceedings, discreetly." Lydia hesitated. "Do you want him to know?" Grace looked out the window where the Dallas skyline glowed gold under morning light. "Not yet," she whispered. "Let him think the world still applauds him." As she spoke, her mind slipped back to 2 years earlier. The accident. The car crash that left her paralyzed had been more than fate. It had been betrayal in motion. Eric was driving that night, furious after an argument about money. He'd been drinking. She'd begged him to slow down, but he didn't listen. When they hit the barrier, she was the one crushed by the dashboard. He walked away with only a bruised wrist, and yet, in court, he had sworn he wasn't at fault. She'd protected him. "He's my husband," she told the police. "It was my fault." She'd thought love meant loyalty, but while she learned to walk again through pain and willpower, he learned to live again through vanity and lust. A soft knock pulled her back to the present. Lydia whispered, "He's here." Eric stepped into the office wearing a tailored navy suit and that easy charm that used to disarm her. Well, Grace Donovan, running hospitals now? Impressive," she smiled politely. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" He leaned against the desk. "I heard a rumor," he said. "You're investing in medical tech. I was thinking maybe we could collaborate. Business, not personal." She raised a brow. "Business?" "Yeah," he said, grinning. "No hard feelings, right? Besides, my new firm could use a strong investor." "You always had a good head for numbers." Grace's expression stayed unreadable. "You mean the firm your mistress runs on your behalf while siphoning your accounts?" His smile faltered. "What did you just say?" "Check your Miami statements," she said calmly. "She's been withdrawing under the name Vanessa Blackwell, her maiden name." Eric's eyes darkened. "You're lying," she shrugged. "I never lie about numbers." He slammed his hand on the desk. "Don't play with me, Grace." She looked up at him, her tone measured. "You already did that when I was in a wheelchair, Eric. This time, I'm just moving the pieces you left behind." For the first time, he saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Not love, not pain, but strategy. The woman who once cried over his betrayal was gone. In her place stood someone colder, smarter, unshakable. He stormed out, phone already to his ear. Grace exhaled slowly, her fingers brushing the pendant she now wore around her neck. Her father's hospital key tag. "Let the games begin," she murmured. That evening, news broke. Breaking: tech entrepreneur Eric Donovan. Under investigation for financial misconduct. Vanessa threw her phone across the room, shouting, "What the hell is this?" Eric grabbed the remote, flipping through channels, his name flashing in headlines. "Someone leaked our records," he hissed. "Someone inside." And across the city, Grace watched the same news from her quiet mansion. She didn't smile. She simply turned off the TV, whispering, "This is only step one." Her revenge wasn't built on rage, it was built on patience. Every move she made was precise, methodical, surgical. She'd learned from her father that healing and destruction both required steady hands. As she closed her eyes, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number read, "You're not done, Grace. They took your love. Take their empire." She stared at it for a long moment, then whispered to herself, "I will." Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of thunder over Dallas. A storm was coming, one that would strip away the illusion of power and expose who truly owned the world they lived in. Grace wasn't just taking back her dignity. She was rewriting the story of every woman who'd ever been broken and told to stay silent. And when the storm finally hit, it wouldn't just ruin Eric and Vanessa. It would redefine what revenge meant. The storm that rolled over Dallas that night wasn't just weather, it was prophecy. Eric sat in his car outside the law firm of Collins and Westbrook, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He had just left a meeting that shredded what little confidence he had left. His company's accounts were frozen. Investors were panicking, and someone, he didn't know who, had reported his offshore dealings to the IRS. He thought of Grace's calm voice the day before. "Check your Miami statements." It couldn't be her. She wasn't capable of this. She was soft, broken, dependent, wasn't she? Inside Havenfield Medical, Grace watched the rain run down the glass walls of her office. The city lights reflected like fire in her eyes. Lydia entered quietly, holding a sealed envelope. "The transfer's complete," she said. "Vanessa's personal assets are now under investigation for fraud. The feds will freeze her accounts by morning." Grace nodded slowly. "Good. What about the board?" "They've approved the merger with Donovan Biotech. You'll have full control of the company within 72 hours. Grace smiled faintly. "Perfect. That's where he'll feel it most, losing his crown before the crowd." Her mind wandered to the past again, to the nights in that same hospital when she couldn't move her legs, when Eric stood by the window texting while she begged him to just hold her hand. "I can't do this forever, Grace," he had said. "I didn't sign up to take care of a cripple." She remembered crying quietly after he left that night. The nurse, a gentle woman named Maggie, had whispered, "Don't let pain make you small. Let it make you silent enough for your power to grow." That power had now matured into something terrifyingly precise. Across town, Vanessa paced their penthouse suite, phone pressed to her ear. "Eric, they're freezing everything. My accounts, your shares, even the house deed, what's happening?" Eric slammed a glass against the counter. "Someone's behind this. Someone's playing us." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "You think it's your ex-wife?" He hesitated. The silence between them answered for him. The following morning, a luxury black SUV pulled into the Havenfield parking lot. Eric stepped out, rain dripping off his suit jacket. He didn't have an appointment, but he didn't need one. He stormed through the lobby and straight into Grace's office. She was waiting, calm, composed, wearing an ivory blouse that contrasted sharply with his fury. "Grace," he barked. "You did this." She looked up from her documents, her tone measured. "Did what exactly?" "You destroyed me. My company, my accounts, everything." She leaned back, folding her hands. "Correction. You destroyed you. I simply revealed the truth." He slammed a folder onto her desk. "You think this makes you powerful?" "You'll pay for this." She tilted her head. "Pay? I already did, Eric, with my body, my trust, my love. This is just reimbursement." Her calm infuriated him. He lunged forward, but her security chief stepped into the doorway. "Sir," he said firmly, "you need to leave." Eric's jaw clenched. He glared at her, hatred and disbelief mixing in his eyes. "You'll regret this." Grace's voice lowered, steady as a heartbeat. "I already regretted loving you. Everything after that has been liberation." He left, slamming the door so hard the glass trembled. Grace exhaled, her hands shaking only after he was gone. Lydia entered quietly. "Ma'am, the press conference starts in an hour." Grace smiled faintly. "Let's begin the second act." At the downtown media center, the cameras flashed as Grace stepped onto the stage. Her name now appeared not as Mrs. Donovan, but Grace Hamilton. She faced the reporters with calm authority. Havenfield Medical is proud to announce our acquisition of Donovan Biotech, she said. Effective immediately, I'll be serving as the new CEO. The crowd erupted. Questions flew. And miles away, Eric watched the broadcast on TV, eyes wide, face pale. Vanessa stood behind him, speechless. She owns it? Vanessa whispered. Eric couldn't answer. His phone buzzed. A notification from the Dallas Stock Exchange. Donovan Biotech shares had plummeted by 64% in under an hour. Investors were fleeing. Vanessa turned on him, fury blazing. You said she was finished. She was, he muttered. I don't understand. How did she? But he didn't finish. Because the next segment played on screen. An investigative report showing Vanessa's embezzlement trail. Her name, her accounts, her signature. Her scream filled the room. You said no one could trace it. Eric stared, frozen. I didn't, Grace, she set us up. That night, Vanessa packed her bags and left without a word. Eric didn't stop her. He couldn't. He sat alone in the dark, watching the rain smear the city lights across his window like melted gold. In the distance, Havenfield's name glowed bright against the storm clouds. Her name, her legacy. Grace sat by the same window in her office, her reflection calm, composed, almost sorrowful. Revenge hadn't healed her body, but it had healed her silence. She had spent years being pitied, underestimated, erased. Now every man and woman in Dallas knew her name again. Still, her eyes carried something softer. Grief for what might have been, for the love that died before the accident ever did. She whispered into the empty room. You took everything from me, Eric, but you gave me something greater. Clarity. Then quietly she added, and clarity never forgives. 2 weeks later, the city woke to chaos. Eric's face was plastered across every business channel. Disgraced tech CEO faces criminal charges. He hadn't slept in days. The once proud man who strode through boardrooms in Armani suits now sat alone in a half-empty apartment, unshaven, drowning in half-empty bottles of whiskey. The penthouse had been seized. The cars repossessed. His mother, heartbroken by the scandal, had returned to the same hospital he once bragged about paying for, Havenfield Medical Center. Grace knew. She'd authorized her admission personally. When she entered Martha Donovan's room, the older woman's eyes filled with tears. Grace, she whispered, I don't understand what happened. Eric's lost everything. He won't even come see me. Grace sat beside her, taking her frail hand. Sometimes loss is the only language the proud understand. Martha's voice broke. He's my son, but I can't defend what he did to you. Grace smiled softly. You don't have to. Life already did. She stood, adjusting her blazer. Rest now, Mrs. Donovan, you're safe here. You always will be. Outside the hospital, cameras gathered like vultures. The city smelled of rain and scandal. Grace walked through the lobby, past whispers of that's her, the ex-wife, and stepped into her black Bentley. In another part of Dallas, Eric sat across from his attorney, Mr. Lang. They're offering a settlement, the lawyer said. But you'll lose everything. Eric laughed bitterly. I already have, Lang sighed. There's one clause you should see. He slid a paper across the table. It's from Havenfield. They're offering you medical insurance coverage for your mother, courtesy of the owner. Eric's heart stopped for a beat. Courtesy of who? Lang looked at him grimly. Grace Hamilton. The words hit harder than prison bars. Grace wasn't just haunting him. She was saving the one person he loved most. And she was doing it with grace. That night, he drove to Havenfield in the rain. He didn't call. He didn't ask permission. He just needed to see her. Grace was in her office when he entered, dripping wet, face hollow, pride shattered. She looked up, her expression unreadable. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. I had to come, he murmured. You won, she tilted her head. It wasn't a competition. It was, he said, stepping closer. You just never played dirty. That's what makes it worse. Grace studied him for a long moment. Do you remember the night of my accident? He looked away. Don't do this. Do you remember what you said when I begged you not to leave? He swallowed hard. Grace, you said I can't spend my life with someone broken. Her voice trembled but didn't break. And yet here we are. Look who's standing and look who's crawling. His eyes glistened, guilt slicing through him. I was stupid. I was angry. I was scared. She leaned forward, and I was patient. That's the difference, he lowered his head. Vanessa's gone. Investors, friends, everyone. Gone. I've got nothing left. Grace nodded slowly. That's how it feels when people love your image, not your soul. He looked up at her. Do you hate me? She was silent for a long moment. Then softly, no. Hate means you still have power over me. I feel nothing. And that's worse, isn't it? He blinked back tears. I don't expect forgiveness, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Grace exhaled, rising from her chair. She walked toward the window, her reflection sharp against the rain-streaked glass. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you lost, he said nothing. The silence between them was thick, final. Then she turned, voice calm, almost kind. You know, Eric, I didn't destroy you out of revenge. I simply stopped protecting you. He stared at her, realizing the truth. Every fall had been a chain reaction of his own greed, vanity, and cruelty. She had simply stepped aside and let gravity do the rest. As he turned to leave, she spoke once more. Eric? He paused. She smiled faintly. Tell your mother she'll always have a room here. No matter what happens, that mercy, cold, elegant, unstoppable, broke him more than vengeance ever could. Weeks later, Grace attended a charity gala at the Wellington Manor, the same hall where he once humiliated her. This time she was the keynote speaker. Cameras flashed, the crowd rose, and the whispers were different now. That's Grace Hamilton, the woman who rebuilt Havenfield, the woman who owns half of Dallas. She took the stage, her silver cane glinting beneath the chandelier. 2 years ago, she began. I was told I'd never walk again. I was told I'd never matter again. But pain is a strange teacher. It teaches you that silence can be your loudest weapon, applause thundered, she continued. Tonight I dedicate this foundation to women who've been broken. Silenced, betrayed. You don't need revenge to rise. You just need the courage to stand tall when the world expects you to crawl. As the audience rose in ovation, the camera panned briefly to the back of the room, where Eric stood, unnoticed, watching her with tears in his eyes. Then quietly he turned and disappeared into the night. Grace looked out over the crowd, her heart calm, her face luminous beneath the golden light. She had lost everything once, her love, her body, her name. But she had rebuilt it all with steel instead of bone, dignity instead of desperation. And as she lifted her glass, her words carried through the hall like a benediction. To silence. To power. To every woman who learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. The applause returned, echoing through the same hall where her humiliation once began. Only this time, it sounded like victory. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the night sky, and for the first time in years, Grace smiled. Not because she won, but because she no longer needed to.